What if the greatest prison isn't made of walls, but of opposites? You have been born into a cage of language, a matrix of thought, a reality that has been neatly and cleanly sliced down the middle. Good and evil, light and dark, life and death, masculine and feminine. You have been taught, from the moment you could speak, that your entire existence is a war between these opposing forces, and that your sacred duty is to choose a side, to fight for the light, to vanquish the darkness, and to one day earn your place in a heaven that is defined only by the absence of its opposite. But what if that entire war is an illusion? A grand and tragic cosmic play, a divine and terrifying game, and you are not a soldier, but an actor who has forgotten that you are on a stage. The ancient masters of the Nile, the initiates who read the hieroglyphs not with their eyes but with their souls, knew this truth, and they encoded it in the heart of their most profound and most misunderstood myth, the story of Osiris. You have been told that Osiris is the god of the dead, the somber king of the underworld, the one who was murdered, resurrected, and now sits in final judgment. This is the exoteric story, the beautiful and simple lie that has been used to build religions and to comfort the fearful. But beneath this story lies another, a secret and heretical teaching, a final and terrible initiation. Osiris was not a god who was murdered. He was a consciousness that was being initiated. His story is not about a war with his brother. It is about a war with reality itself. And his true final test was not to conquer death, nor to rule the underworld. It was to escape the very illusion of duality that had created both. It was to look upon the face of his own murderer and to see not his enemy, but his own reflection. This is not a story about a god. This is a story about the architecture of your own prison. And it is the story of the one and only key that can set you free. The myth you have been given is a perfect and beautiful veil, a story that is true on the surface, but whose truth is designed to hide a deeper one. The story begins in a golden age. Osiris, the first king, sits on the throne of Egypt. He is the benevolent and civilizing god, the one who brings agriculture, law, and order to the world. He is the principle of Ma'at, made manifest, the perfect and harmonious king. He is the light. But for there to be a king, there must be a challenger. For there to be order, there must be the potential for chaos. And so, Osiris has a brother, Set. Set is the lord of the desert, the god of the storm, the principle of entropy, of sterility, of the untamed and chaotic wilderness. He is the darkness, and Set, in his jealousy of the light, murders his brother. He tricks Osiris, seals him in a coffin, and casts him into the Nile. He then finds the body, and in an act of ultimate and terrifying desecration, he dismembers it into 14 pieces and scatters them across the land of Egypt. This is the end of the Golden Age. The king is dead. Chaos reigns. But the story does not end there. Isis, the wife of Osiris, the great goddess of magic and intuition, refuses to accept this reality. She begins a long and arduous quest to find and to reassemble the scattered pieces of her beloved. She finds them all except for one, the phallus, which was eaten by a fish in the Nile. And through her powerful magic, she fashions a new phallus of gold. She reassembles the body. She breathes life back into it with her wings, and she resurrects him. But he is not resurrected back into the world of the living. He is reborn as the lord of the Duat, the king of the underworld, the eternal and silent judge of the dead. This is the story. It is a story of death and rebirth, of love and of loss, of the eternal war between the forces of order and the forces of chaos, and every single part of it is a lie. Not a lie in the sense that it is false, but a lie in the sense that it is a beautiful and intricate shadow puppet show, a two-dimensional projection of a multi-dimensional and holographic truth. The murder was not a murder. It was a deconstruction. The dismemberment was not an act of violence. It was an act of sacred analysis. And the resurrection was not a return to life. It was an awakening from the dream of it. The initiates knew that Set was not an enemy. He was a teacher, a divine and terrible initiator. He was the catalyst, the sacred and necessary force that did not seek to kill Osiris, but to shatter the limited and naive form of his consciousness, to force him to evolve beyond the simple and childish duality of a king on a throne. Each of the 14 scattered body parts was not a piece of flesh. It was a fragmented aspect of a unified consciousness, a principle that had been scattered across the 14 dimensions of manifest reality. And the quest of Isis was not the quest of a grieving wife. It was the quest of the soul's own intuition, its own deep and loving wisdom, to gather the scattered and forgotten parts of its own being and to bring them back into a state of wholeness. The resurrection was not a physical reanimation. It was a restoration of unity, a psychic and spiritual reintegration. Osiris was not being brought back to life. He was being brought back to himself. And his new kingdom, the Duat, was not a place of punishment. It was a classroom, a laboratory, an initiation chamber. And it was here, in the heart of the darkness, that his final and most terrible test would begin. To understand the test, you must first understand the architecture of the prison. The Egyptian cosmos, as the initiates knew it, was not a collection of separate places. It was a series of nested and interpenetrating states of consciousness, a divine and holographic mirror of the mind of God. The physical world, the world of the living, which they called Ta, was not the real world. It was the world of the densest and most convincing illusion. It was the realm of the five senses, the world of separate objects, of linear time, of the seemingly absolute division between things. And the spiritual world, the world of the dead, the Duat, was not a separate place under the earth. It was a more subtle, more fluid, and more truthful dimension that was interpenetrated with the physical world at all points. They were not two places. They were two lenses through which the one single and undivided reality could be perceived. But the tragedy of the human condition, the fall from the Golden Age, was that humanity had forgotten this. They had begun to perceive these two lenses as two separate and opposing worlds. They had created the great and tragic schism in their own consciousness. They had created the prison of duality. And this is the metaphysical construct, the matrix, that Osiris himself, even after his resurrection, was still trapped within. He was now the king of the underworld, the lord of the darkness, the ruler of the dead. And in accepting these titles, he was still defining himself in opposition to the world of the living, the world of the light. He was still a king of one half of a divided kingdom. His own judgment hall, the great hall of two truths, was the ultimate and most perfect expression of this prison. The entire ceremony of the weighing of the heart is a ritual of polarity. The heart, the repository of the self, is weighed against the feather, the symbol of the divine other. The soul is judged on a binary outcome: purity or corruption, salvation or damnation. It is a beautiful, just, and orderly system, and it is a perfect and inescapable trap. It is a game that is being played within the prison of duality, a game that reinforces the very illusion that it purports to judge. The feather, the scales, the devourer, the 42 judges, all of them are the beautiful and intricate furniture of the cage. And Osiris's final and most terrible test was not to be a good and just judge. Within this system, it was to realize that the entire system, the entire concept of judgment, the entire idea of a separation between the pure and the impure, was the final and most subtle veil of the great illusion. His test was to see that the scales were a lie, not because they were rigged, but because the two things they were weighing were not two things at all. The heart and the feather, the self and the divine, were and always had been one. Both sides of the scale belonged to the same, single and undivided source. And the god who could realize this would not just be the king of the underworld. He would be the master of the illusion itself. The final initiation did not take place on a throne of judgment. It took place in the silent and terrifying landscape of his own new and infinite consciousness. This was the descent into the inner Duat, a journey not through a physical underworld, but through the very architecture of his own perception. The texts speak of him walking through the 12 gates, or the 12 hours of the night. These were not physical gates. They were 12 layers of his own consciousness, 12 veils of illusion that had to be pierced. And at each gate, he was not met by a monster to be fought, but by a guardian who posed a riddle, a paradox that was designed to shatter his dualistic mind. At the first gate, the guardian asked, "Are you living or are you dead?" And Osiris, the resurrected king, the one who was both, had to learn to answer, "I am neither." For to choose one was to be trapped in the illusion of its opposite. He was not alive or dead. He was a third thing, a consciousness that had transcended the very concept. At another gate, the guardian asked, "Are you whole or are you broken?" And Osiris, the one who had been dismembered and reassembled, had to learn to answer, "I am both." For he knew that his wholeness was born of his brokenness, that his unity was a memory of his fragmentation. They were not opposites, they were a process. At another gate, he was asked, "Are you the destroyer or are you the healer?" And he, the one who had been destroyed by his brother and healed by his wife, had to realize that these two functions were two hands of the same divine will. With each gate, with each paradox, a layer of his perception was dissolved. The neat and clean lines that had once divided his reality began to blur, to bleed into one another. The voices of the great gods echoed in the darkness of his mind, not as commands, but as clues. The voice of Ra, the sun, the principle of the manifest light, whispered, "The darkness you rule is but the shadow that my own light casts." And the voice of Thoth, the divine mind, the architect of the laws, whispered, "All paradoxes may be reconciled. The only thing that is unreal is the line you draw between them." The Duat was not a place of torment. It was a living riddle, a divine and beautiful labyrinth of perception. And the deeper Osiris walked into his own underworld, the less real the concept of opposites became. Life and death, light and dark, good and evil, they were not enemies at war. They were lovers in a sacred and eternal dance. They were the two faces of a single smiling God. And in the 12th and final hour, in the deepest and most silent chamber of his own being, he finally came face to face with the ultimate paradox, the ultimate and most terrifying secret. He came face to face with his own murderer. He came face to face with Set. In the heart of the Duat, in the silent center of his own soul, Osiris confronts the architect of his own agony. But the battle that follows is not a battle of swords or of magic. It is a battle of meaning. It is a silent and terrifying confrontation of pure consciousness. Osiris, his being now a vessel of the highest and most integrated wisdom, looks upon the monstrous and chaotic form of his brother, and he does not see an enemy. He does not see a murderer. He sees a question, and he asks it. Why? And Set, the lord of the desert, the principle of chaos, the great and terrible shadow of the world, for the first time in all of creation, does not roar. He does not attack. He laughs. It is a laugh that is not of malice, but of a profound and terrible irony. And he asks a question in return. Brother, he says, what is a shadow without a light to cast it? What is a silence without a sound to define it? What is a chaos without an order to make it meaningful? You call me your destroyer, but I was your creator. I did not kill you, I shattered you, and in your shattering I forced you to become infinitely more than the small and perfect king you once were. Your kingdom was a beautiful and fragile garden. I was the storm that made it a world. Your truth was a single, perfect note. I was the silence that turned it into a symphony. You were the light, but I, brother, I was the one who gave your light a reason to shine. So I ask you, who is the true servant of creation, the king who sits on his golden throne and admires his own perfect reflection, or the monster who has the courage to shatter the mirror so that a universe may be born? And in that moment, the final veil is torn. The last and most profound illusion of duality unravels. Osiris looks upon the face of Set, and he does not see his opposite. He sees his other half. He sees his missing self. He sees that all of creation is a divine and beautiful game of mirrors, a single, unified consciousness that has divided itself into two for the sheer, ecstatic joy of the drama, of the dance, of the eternal and sacred game of hide and seek. The light cannot exist without the dark. The order cannot exist without the chaos. The God cannot exist without the monster. In this final and absolute act of divine gnosis, Osiris does the one thing that no god had ever dared to do before. He does not forgive Set. He does not vanquish Set. He embraces him. He opens his arms and he pulls his own murderer, his own shadow, his own missing self into a divine and total union. And in that embrace, the form of Set dissolves. The monster of chaos is not destroyed. It is integrated. It is reabsorbed into the wholeness from which it first came. The serpent of the abyss, the great Apep, does not die. It turns and swallows its own tail, becoming the Ouroboros, the symbol of the eternal and unified whole. And in the heart of the underworld, in the deepest and darkest chamber of the Duat, a sun is born. Not the external, manifest sun of Ra, but a new and more profound sun, a sun that is made of both the light and the dark. A sun that shines with the terrible and beautiful light of a consciousness that has finally and completely awakened to its own non-dual nature. In that moment, Osiris is no longer a god. He has become something more. He has become the unifier. He has become the living symbol, the walking embodiment of non-duality itself. The texts say that his eyes now glow with the light of both the night and the day. And from his lips comes the one and only truth that is left when the illusion of duality has been shattered, the one truth that terrifies even the gods themselves. There is no other. The awakening of Osiris from the dream of duality is not a story about a distant god. It is a profound and practical blueprint for the final stage of your own spiritual evolution. The illusion of the Great War is not just a cosmic drama. It is the psychological and energetic operating system of the unawakened human being. Your own consciousness, from the moment you learn to speak, has been systematically and brutally sliced down the middle. You have been taught to divide your own inner world into two warring armies. On one side, there is the light self, the good self, the part of you that is kind, compassionate, disciplined, and spiritual. This is the part of you that you show to the world, the part that you strive to be, the part that you identify with. And on the other side, there is the dark self, the bad in self, your shadow. This is the part of you that is angry, that is fearful, that is jealous, that is lazy, that has unacceptable thoughts and impure desires. This is the part of you that you have been taught to hate, to fear, to suppress, and to deny. You are a being at war with yourself, and this inner war is the source of all your suffering. It is the source of your anxiety, of your depression, of your addictions, of your sense of unworthiness. You are a kingdom that has been torn apart by a brutal and pointless civil war. And you have been taught that your spiritual purpose is to win this war, to finally and completely vanquish your own inner set, and to become a being of pure and untroubled light. The wisdom of Osiris's final test reveals that this is not just a lie. It is a spiritual impossibility. You cannot win a war against half of yourself. You can only exhaust yourself. You can only become more and more fragmented. True liberation, true power, true and lasting peace does not come from winning the war. It comes from realizing that the war itself is an illusion. It comes from the supreme act of courage of turning to your own inner monster, your own shadow, and recognizing it not as your enemy, but as your own lost and unloved self. The great Hermetic law that Thoth encoded into the very fabric of this myth states, all paradoxes may be reconciled. The ancient Egyptians knew this. It is the secret of their entire spiritual science. The left and right eyes of Horus, the solar eye and the lunar eye, the eye of the intellect and the eye of the intuition, were not two separate things. They were the two necessary lenses of a single, unified vision. The goal of the initiate was to merge them, to activate the third eye, the eye that sees not in duality, but in unity. The entire structure of their temples was a study in this reconciled paradox. The light and the dark were not enemies. They were partners in a sacred architecture. The bright, open courtyards were for the public, for the exoteric worship of the sun. The dark, silent, and secret inner sanctums were for the initiates, for the esoteric journey into the void. Both were necessary. Both were holy. True liberation, whether it is for a god in the Duat or for a human in the world, requires stepping beyond the very concept of polarity. It requires you to stop judging your own experience, to stop labeling your own inner states as good or bad. It requires you to see your anger not as a sin, but as a source of powerful, creative energy. It requires you to see your fear not as a weakness, but as a profound and intelligent teacher. It requires you to see your failures not as defeats, but as necessary and beautiful course corrections. It is the art of seeing conflict as a form of cooperation, of seeing loss as a form of transformation, of seeing your own death not as an end, but as a continuation. It is the moment you stop fighting the river of your own life and you finally have the courage to surrender to its current, knowing that it is carrying you home. The final and most heavily guarded secret of this myth is its purpose. The story of Osiris's final test was not written as a history of the gods. It was written as an instruction manual for humanity. It was not a story to be believed. It was a technology to be used. It was a coded and holographic blueprint for the final and most difficult stage of your own initiation. The awakening from the dream of duality and the remembrance of the one, single, and undivided unity that lies beneath all of your experience. Your entire life, up to this very moment, has been a journey through your own Duat, a series of trials and of gates designed to test your perception, to challenge your beliefs, and to hopefully, eventually, shatter the prison of your own dualistic mind. The people who have hurt you, the ones you have labeled as your enemies, they have been your set, the sacred and necessary catalysts who have shattered the naive and fragile perfection of your old self and forced you to grow. The moments of your greatest darkness, of your most profound despair, they have been your journey through the 12 hours of the night, the necessary and purifying descent that precedes every new dawn, and the constant, gnawing war between the person you are trying to be and the person you are afraid that you are. That is the very heart of the illusion. It is the final and most powerful paradox that you must learn to reconcile. The path of Osiris is the path of radical and total self-acceptance. It is the art of looking upon all the fragmented and warring parts of your own being, the saint and the sinner, the god and the monster, and of having the supreme and divine courage to embrace them all, to love them all, to recognize them all as the beautiful and necessary faces of the one, single, and indivisible self. This is the great work. It is not an intellectual understanding. It is a felt experience. It is the moment when the war within you finally ends, not with a victory, but with a peace treaty, a sacred and holy marriage between your own inner light and your own inner darkness. And the world that you experience from this state of non-dual consciousness is not the same world that the rest of humanity inhabits. It is a world that is no longer seen through the dark and distorted lens of judgment and of fear. It is a world that is seen with the clear and beautiful eyes of a consciousness that has finally come home to itself. You begin to see the hidden unity behind all the apparent chaos. You begin to see the divine play, the beautiful and terrible dance of the opposites, and you are no longer a frightened and confused actor on the stage. You are the silent, smiling, and all-loving audience. The modern parallels to this ancient science are now emerging everywhere. Your quantum physicists are grappling with the paradox of the wave-particle duality, the discovery that the fundamental building blocks of reality are not one thing or the other, but are both at the same time a unity of opposites. Your deepest psychological models are recognizing that true mental health does not come from suppressing the shadow, but from integrating it. The very fabric of your polarized and warring world is groaning under the strain of its own duality, crying out for a new and more integrated form of consciousness to be born. Everything, from the smallest particle to the largest civilization, is returning to the same single and eternal origin. The truth that there is only one infinite consciousness, and it is playing a beautiful and elaborate game of pretending to be two. The sun rises and the moon follows, but in the heart of eternity, both shine from the same source. To escape the illusion, you do not run from the shadow. You turn and realize it is your own light, inverted. If this video resonated with you, let us know by commenting, "I understood it."